Hello there, I am Joseph Gomes, and this is my part of the Unity Advanced tutorial. I will be explaining how you can export a model and its animations from Blender to the Unity game engine. To begin with, you will need to make sure you have the appropriate programs installed. This tutorial is using version 2.79 of Blender and version 2020.3.16f1 of the Unity game engine. You will not need any other programs to achieve the desired result. Before we get started, we are going to need two things. First, we're going to need a character that is modeled, rigged, and animated. In this case, we have this fellow here, who has a simple idle animation. We will obviously also need a scene in Unity. I have created a simple one with a plane that functions as a floor. We will also need to create two folders to prepare the project for the character export. These folders can be seen below, the first one being the character folder, which is going to contain the imported character from Blender, which will have their model, mesh, any animations they had as well. There will also be an animations folder, which will contain the animation controller and the animations once we have actually set them up in the Unity game engine. Assuming all goes well, by the end of this part of the tutorial, this character will be imported into the Unity engine, and this idle animation will be playing on a loop. First things first, we need to export the character from Blender, which is the most simple step. So, once we've got a character who has animations set up, we're going to go to File, Export, and we're going to export it as a .fbx file. We will then be taken to this export screen, which will contain a couple options that we could change. We will not touch these settings as that will not be necessary for us to export the character to Unity. So what we want to do is we're going to find the directory for the Unity project. Now, for me, this requires me to go into my drive, but for you, it will probably be in a different spot. Regardless, you must find where your Unity project resides, click inside, click into Assets, and we are going to be exporting this character into the character folder we had created before beginning this process. Let's go ahead and click Export FBX. Alright, returning to our Unity project, we can see that in the character folder is the character that we had just exported from Blender. You can find that their armature, their mesh, as well as any other animations have transferred over. Now, the character I've created has multiple animations, but the only one that we are concerned with is this one here, which you can only tell is different from the others by clicking on it and seeing its name on the upper right in the inspector. This is the idle blade animation for my character. When it comes to your character, it will most definitely have a different name, but this will be the animation that we're going to be using. We're going to go ahead and drag and drop the character model into the scene. Now, if we click play, you'll see that obviously there is absolutely no movement as the animations haven't been set up yet. So we're going to go ahead and click on the player, or at least the model that we've imported. Click on the animation tab, and if you do not have an animation tab here, you can add it by going to Window, Animation, and clicking Animation or Animator. It's a good idea to add both of these to your project, as you're going to need to use both of them. Now that we've got the character selected, which in my case is named Character Sword, it will give us the option to create an animator and an animation clip. And we're going to do that. So let's go ahead and click Create. We'll be prompted to save the name of this animation. We're going to do this in the other folder we created called Animations. And we're just going to name this player underscore idle, and we're going to save it. You'll see that a timeline has appeared in the animation tab. We're going to ignore this for now and instead switch to the animator tab. Whenever we add an animation to a game object, the animator tab will show every animation as a different player state in this grid-based view. For example, the player idle animation we created is visible here. Now that we've created this animation state, how do we make it so that the idle animation from Blender is the one that is played? Well, that's simple. We simply click and drag the animation from the expanded view, because when you import a character, there will be this little arrow. If you click that, it will reveal the animations. So if we drag the animation we want, we're going to, while we have the player idle animation state selected, drag the animation we want into the motion value in the inspector. Now, if we go ahead and play the game, you'll see that the animation was added to the character and played once. Now, we want this animation to loop, so we have to make a couple changes. Let's go ahead and click on the idle blade animation, and you'll see in the inspector this small edit button. We're going to go ahead and click that. We are presented with these import settings, which will allow us to adjust how the animation is imported somewhat. But the only options we care about are down here, with loop time and loop pose. We're going to first check loop time, which will then allow loop pose to be checked. And by checking both these boxes, we can then apply our changes. And we'll go ahead and click play again. As you can see, the animation now repeats, looping once it reaches the end of its time. This concludes my part of the tutorial explaining how to export a model and animation from Blender and import them into a Unity project.
Now we're going to go through how to transition between different animations. In this case, we'll have this character go from the idle animation to a running animation, and vice versa. To start, we need to add the running animation to the character's animator. To do this, we're going to go to Animator, right-click and create an empty state. We'll name this Player Running. Next, we'll drag the running animation into motion. Now, we want to go to Parameters on the top left of the Animator window and create an integer parameter. We will name this Condition. Now we'll create our transitions by right-clicking player idle, make transition. We'll drag this arrow into our running animation. We will also create a transition back to player idle. Clicking one of the transition lines will open this window in the inspector. Right now we want to work with the conditions. Press the plus to add a condition. We'll make it so when the condition parameter is 1, idle will transition into running. We'll also do the reverse for the other transition. We also want to have the running animation loop, so don't forget to tick loop time and loop pose. I'm just going to move the animated window down here, and now when we play, the character idles as normal. But when we change the condition to 1, the running animation plays instead. You'll also notice that the next animation will not play until the previous one is completed. We don't want this in this case, so to fix it, click on each of the transitions and untick has exit time. With this unticked, the animations no longer need to complete to transition. You may also notice that the animations don't instantly switch between each other, and that there's a small window of time where the animations blend together. We can also alter this with a smaller timeline in the inspector window. Toying with this blue area will change the speed at which animations transition between each other. In this case, we'll make it slightly faster, but not instant. Now when we play, our character switches between these animations much faster. Now we'll make a very simple script to make the running animation play when the character moves forward. First, we'll make a folder for all of our scripts. Then we'll create a script attached to our character called player controller. To start, we'll make a float for our character speed. And we'll set it to 5. We'll make an animator, and we'll call on that character's animator in our start function. First, we'll simply move our character forward using the W key. Now let's test this out. Awesome. Now that he moves forward, we can call upon our animator's condition and set it to 1 when we press the W key. We'll do this by doing anim.setInteger. naming a condition's name and setting the integer to 1. Now when we press forward, the character's animations change to move forward as well, but he never transitions back to his idle state. What we need to do now is set the condition back to 0 when we're no longer pressing W. To do that, we'll simply use get key up and set that integer back to 0. Now why isn't that working? I see. I still set the integer back to 1. Let's set that back to 0. Let's just set that back to 0. And there we go. The character transitions between idle and running as intended. Now we can watch him run into the distance. Well, that concludes our tutorial for how to import animation into Unity from Blender, and a basic overview of how to use these animations within Unity. I'm Steven, and Joseph and I both hope this tutorial was useful.